So welcome everybody. So I'm David Marr Roberts. I'm the COO here at Dialect. We're both sponsors of, one of the sponsors of the Bath Digital Festival, and we're organisers of this afternoon's panel, which asks the question, everybody plays games, but are games for everybody? Before I hand over to Lou, who's our moderator for today, I just wanted to introduce you to Dialect a little bit. So we're a full service digital marketing agency. Our superpower is that we are experts engaging a very specific audience, which is the tech and gaming audience. And we do that by combining content and media and data. We do all of that for global brands. So our clients include companies like Logitech and NVIDIA and Blue Microphones and Astro, Dungeons and Dragons, Rebellion, CCP, etc., etc. Our headquarters are in San Francisco, but we have a big office here in Bath. We have about 30 employees worldwide, with a small army of contractors and freelancers that help us at our busier times. So the reason for today's panel is really simple, because as a business, we specialize in understanding the gaming audience. And we know that over the last few years, that gamers have really become way more diverse and the audience has broadened out dramatically. But what we're not so sure about is whether this breadth of audience is something that games developers and marketers are responding to. So we wanted to ask the question. And to help with that discussion, we have, I can introduce you to her, but she's already been introduced, but to games journalist and presenter and a great friend of Dialect's, Louise Blaine.
Hello, just before we go on the panel, and we will be hitting go, as you'll realise quite quickly, it is something that we've pre-recorded, so you'll see very quickly from a different angle of me and some different clothes. But I just wanted to say that as a technology and gaming journalist for the last 10 years, representation in gaming is really, really important to me. I mean, gaming, especially over the past year, has offered people the chance to connect with friends online. So more people are playing socially, more people are finding that they're having to stay inside, so they're finding new things to do, which is sometimes going back to games. But again, games over the last 20 odd years have changed massively, but in terms of the representation of who's playing compared to what's on screen, it's really important to talk about that. So with that in mind, we'll get started in the panel, but just to say I'm actually on hand to answer any questions you might have. So there's a Q&A function. So if you have any questions, do pop a question in there and I'll be the one to answer it. But until then, I'll hand you back to DMR to hit play, and please enjoy the panel. Thanks for watching.
Cool. So hopefully everybody can see the screen now, and as long as I can get rid of my video, here we go.
Hello and welcome to this Bath Digital Festival panel. I'm very excited to be talking about this. I'm Louise Blaine, and today we're going to be talking about the fact that everybody plays games, but are games for everybody? Now, I am joined by a team of gaming experts here. I've got Nika Oldale, who is Team 17's usability manager. I have Shay Thompson, who is a producer, a presenter, and the founder of Level Up Link Up. And I have Alex Rowland, who is a learning disabilities technology expert. So let's kick this off. Nika, could you tell me a little bit about what you do? What is a usability manager?
Sure. So I've recently joined Team 17 as their usability manager, and it's sort of my job to take the games that we're sort of developing, and even when they're in their sort of concept form, and put them in front of real players to get a sense of, how does this game work for them? And so we cover everything from how it plays, do they enjoy it, right through to accessibility. Are people with various different abilities and disabilities able to play our games to the fullest? So that's basically my role.
Shay, we'll move on to you.
So yeah, I'm a presenter. Usually that means I'm just speaking words in various places that will let me do it. But then I also kind of started an initiative about 2 years ago when I entered the industry to sort of address the lack of racial diversity that exists within games. It's a problem, not just in games, but everywhere. Everybody of different colors plays video games, and that's not really reflected in the people who make them and talk about them. So that's something that I sort of working to address.
And Alex, what about you?
So in my day job, I work with people with learning disabilities, and my specialism is around using technology and all things digital. And obviously, given our recent kind of situation, it's been very useful. So I've been quite busy. But I've got a special interest in gaming because I'm a bit of a gaming geek, and I've kind of got a new project that I would hopefully talk to you guys about around diversity and inclusion, and including the people that I work with within games and the gaming world.
So I think maybe to start off, we'll talk about the fact that gaming is huge. I mean, if we look at the UK stats, which is the UK's gaming industry body, they say something like 86% of people between 16 and 69 have played computer games in the last year. 52% say they play every day. And this split is 50-50 between men and women. And I'd really like to be really excited about the fact that this is a video games panel, and currently we're outnumbering you 3-1, Alex, which is I don't think this really happens, because people tend to think, before we get on to any other kind of diversity, people tend to think that it is just men who play video games. I think we can all agree that a lot of the time it is white, straight males who tend to have everything video games directed at them. And I think, I guess that's something that we should really talk about first, is the fact that diversity across everything. Let's talk a little bit about representation first, Shay. I mean, what did anything in particular gear you up for change for Level Up Link Up, or was it a general frustration with the way that the industry was going?
I think the really sort of profound moment for me is I started in the industry having, like, I didn't go to uni or anything like that. And so when I stepped into the industry, I was like very like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. My cynicism has since taken over, so all of that is gone. But I went to like my first networking event, like pretty much like 3 months into my first job, and I was like, oh, I want to meet as many people as possible. And I did. Like, don't get me wrong, some people are still like my friends, like to this day. But I was like, I am the only person in this room that looks like me. And you have a shared interest and a common bonding ground with so many other people. But I think, yeah, just having people that look like you in the same place like does a lot for your self-esteem, does a lot for your ego, and just like for your sense of community. So that was why I wanted to sort of build that and have that, for other people who then would end up joining the industry later on.
I think in terms of, obviously you want it, what we all want is to feel represented in the places that we are, the places that we're networking, but also we want to be seen on screen as well, don't we? We want proper representation everywhere across the board. And I think in terms, if we pivot slightly to Alex, there was a particular moment for you, I think playing a recent game that made you think, I want to see diversity across the board and neurodiversity as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a first-person shooter fan. I was playing a bit of Red Dead Redemption 2, and there's a kind of sub-quest within that where you have to help someone round up various people and animals for their circus. And as part of that, you find yourself in a bar, and there's a guy who's obviously portrayed as a person with learning disability, and you have to bring him back to his kind of ironically, he's run away from the circus, not run to it. So you have to bring him back to the circus. And the way that you do this is by beating him unconscious. And so I'm there playing this game with my support worker head on, thinking, this just does not feel right. I know it's set in the Wild West. I know my character is an outlaw. I know that things have moved on, but it still didn't feel right. And I thought, there's part of me thinking, I understand the pressures that games developers and programmers are under. I totally get that, but it just felt a bit lazy. It was like, how are we going to do this? Oh, get him to knock him unconscious. Yeah, but he's a guy with LD. It's all right. It's all right. No one will notice. And it was kind of, it was just that moment for me that really sort of made me think, no, there's got to be a better way of doing this. So, yeah.
And since that happened, have you, obviously you're campaigning for this, have you seen any changes? Has anyone in the industry spoken or talked about the different ways that that potentially things can change, really?
So we are literally just launching as we speak. We're using the festival to kind of springboard off a little bit, and I'm launching my own little project, which is called it just trips off the tongue. It's called the Association for Neurodiversity in Video Games, or ANVG, which is much easier. And basically, neurodiversity just means people whose brains work in a way that is different to the average or different to most people. So within that, you've got people with learning disabilities, people with autism, Asperger's, acquired brain injuries, mental health conditions, that whole range of things. And we wanted to see those people fully represented. As a support worker, I'm in people's homes all day long. And so many of the people I work with play video games, and they love video games. And just like Shay was saying, they don't see themselves in those games. They are what we call the NPCs. They're the non-player characters you might have in that game who you meet, and they kind of further the story, but they're never a main character. You never get to really see what it's like to be them or to experience that. And I thought, the end of the day, the people I support are paying a lot of money and contributing an awful lot to the gaming industry, and they should see themselves in that. Exactly like Shay says, they need to see people who look like themselves, who sound like themselves, and that's what I really want. That's what I'm really passionate about.
I think it's also really important to talk about the fact that games are never just Red Dead Redemption, are they? There are so many different types of games. We can have narrative games, we can laugh at games, we can cry at games. And I think people often have this thought of the fact that games are just boys sitting in basements shooting things. And you know what? That's great fun too. If you want to do that with your friends, that's been a great thing over lockdown. But games are really good for problem solving. Games are great for cognitive processes. Games are really good for dealing with stress. And I think Nika, you could probably talk a lot to this about the fact of accessibility in gaming is so important for those reasons. Can you talk to me a little bit about your past and what you did prior to Team 17, and maybe any changes that happen, on a day-to-day basis for you, specifically for accessibility?
So originally I started off working in a banking software company, again as a lead user researcher. And then so I got on board with accessibility quite quickly. Because I realized incredibly quickly that technology just isn't as accessible as it could be. It really could. It's really not. So there's things like anything simple, sort of like the colors we use and sort of the fonts, anything like that. It really does make an impact on how well someone can use a piece of technology. And what people don't realize is that disabilities are not necessarily things that are permanent either. So disabilities can be anything that comes and goes as well. So one of the examples that I like to use is if you have, say, a mother who's nursing her child, she's at a disadvantage because she's holding a child and then trying to operate a piece of technology with one hand and juggling a baby. So you can class that in the same sort of spectrum as, anyone at any point can become disabled in some way and still need to use technology. So that really started to make me think, how can we make things easier for people, just like that, just for everyone? So that was sort of where I started my journey. I then moved into PlusNet, and I was with them for about a year, and I helped them launch their sort of brand new website. And again, accessibility played like a major part in that. It was absolutely just amazing to find a group of like-minded people that were really, really committed to making sure that anyone can use a service. And so now I've transitioned to Team 17. I've sort of brought that mentality with me. And I think things are slowly changing for the better. So people are more aware now that we need greater representation for, everyone. And we also need to make sure that things are accessible to everyone. And so that's something that I really, really hope that I can push forward in Team 17 going on from now.
So Team 17, people might know games like Worms, they might know Overcooked. That's one where you play with your friends and end up cooking ridiculous creations like burgers, and I always fail at it and I can never make right milkshakes. But is there anything particular that you can think of, maybe in those games or any other Team 17 games this year, where a direct piece of feedback has come in about a certain way the game works, or something that you already implemented that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so Overcooked's probably one of my favourite examples of this, actually. One of my favourite things about Overcooked is the amount of little chefs that we have. So obviously some of them are people, some of them are robots, some of them are, animals, unicorns, axolotls, you name it, it's in there. But one of the things that really sort of stood out to me, even before I actually joined Team 17, was the amount of diversity in sort of the human chefs. So we have, chefs of all nationalities, and I think even a couple of them are represented in wheelchairs as well, which I thought was just really nice. I'd never really seen a video game where I could play as a character that was, in a wheelchair, and that to me was just like, oh, I actually, that's nice to see that representation in there. Obviously, it goes a lot further. So in the actual game itself, we've started implementing some really good sort of accessibility options. So, for example, obviously Overcooked, as you know, it's a hectic game. You've got, potentially 4 little chefs running around, food flying everywhere, and sometimes it's a little bit hard for people to sort of keep track on who their character is, because it is sort of almost top-down view. So you kind of can't really maybe make out, which chef it's yours because they're all wearing chef's hats. So we've implemented things like not just color coding the chefs, so you get like a little ring around them, but we've actually shaped them as well. So you might have a circle or a square or a triangle, so people can identify from the shape, not just the color, to identify which character's theirs. So it makes it easier for people to play. We've also done like a dedicated assist mode as well. So we've put in things like, dyslexia friendly fonts for people. The user interface in the menus are all scalable as well. So you can actually increase and decrease the size of them to make them more readable. We've even gone as far as to sort of make it so that you can take away the timers or increase them, to give people more chance to just enjoy a game rather than feeling like they're under pressure to complete it and then getting frustrated. But when I've actually tested this with my players, so I always like to have a mix of, different types of players with, different abilities, just because, that's what it's like in the real world. It's always interesting the feedback that we get back, and I've had players say, I'd actually prefer to play on assist mode because I can just enjoy it then. So I don't have to be worrying about the timers. I don't have to worry about, getting minus scores. And because the assist mode helps you a little bit, it boosts your scores up. And it allows you to keep playing, so it doesn't keep a level locked if you don't complete it. So people enjoy it because they can just casually play, enjoy the story, and have fun rather than feeling like they're under pressure to be the best at something.
I think I can really appreciate that, the fact of everyone wanting to play games in different ways. I mean, the Last of Us 2 came out this year, and it came out with 5 different difficulty modes. And within those, I think there was something like 6 or 7 different modes that you could then change to change the way you wanted to experience it. And I think that's really important for the fact that games are produced no longer in just one way where this is what you have to do, and if you die at this point then you're going to have to go back to the beginning, and it's going to be like the 1990s and you're going to have one game for 2 years because that's all you're actually going to need. And I think 2020 has especially been good at these different kind of experiences. Would you agree, Shay, in terms of the type of experiences that we are having, that maybe we're seeing the needle move?
Yeah, I think so. I think so in a lot of ways. Like you mentioned The Last of Us 2, which, going into it controversially, I did not enjoy the first one as much as many other people did. So going into the second one, yeah, good taste. So going into the second one, my expectations were quite flat. But then I was blown away not only by like the story, but then by the accessibility options. I think those are so crucial in that, having this masterpiece of an experience, if you then gate lock it with a ton of different barriers, being, the difficulty in a lot of ways, or just, like trying to understand the different menus and systems, by gate locking that experience, you're cutting off millions and millions of people from an experience and it doesn't have to be that way. It really, really doesn't have to. And just in terms of the types of experiences that we've seen, we've seen like a ton of games that have come out that have told loads and loads of different types of stories with loads of different types of protagonists, not only in the AAA scene, but also in the indie scene as well. Off the top of my head, like looking at Control was one of the biggest games of last year. And, we had this kind of female protagonist in this like Lynchian, like really, really wacky story with this gorgeous, like brutalist architecture type setting. would have never imagined to see that kind of game like in this day and age, just because of how things were going. And I think it is speaking to the kind of shift that we can expect. And then in terms of like other stories, Tell Me Why, the latest edition from Don't Nod Entertainment, who previously made like Life is Strange, which has a trans protagonist. I think we are seeing change happen, no matter how small it is happening, and it is changing. So that's heartening, at least.
It's a nice year. Would you agree, Alex? Has there been anything particularly that's affected you this year, and especially has been particularly good for what you're working on?
Well, it's funny. One of the standout titles for me. I don't think it. I think it's probably a little bit older than that, actually. But was is it Hellblade?
Senua's Sacrifice. Yeah,
that's the one. So my partner actually works around mental health and mental health training and first aid and stuff like that. And she was actually one of the guys on one of her courses actually said to her, "You really need to try this game." And we had a look at it, and I was just, after having my sort of Red Dead sort of moment, it was kind of like the opposite with this, because it was so from speaking to people who have various neuroses or psychoses, it was kind of they said it was so realistic. It's the sort of voices in your head. You make a decision to go down a certain pathway, and the voices through your headset saying, "Why are you going down there? You're going to die. Turn back now. There's still time." And I just think that representing conditions like that within games, it's a win-win situation. It's a great, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a wonderful story. Just her story is a wonderful story, but it's also very educational. Gamers are not stupid people. They know when they're being preached to, and none of us want to be preached to. But what we want to do is we want to be engaged. And, it's that old story of, we all know of games that have, been hyped to the max because the graphics are this, and you can play on, it's going to come out in 4K and blah, blah, blah. But the gameplay is rubbish. And we all end up going back to like Mario Kart on the SNES because it just is great fun. So it's so important. It's so important to combine all that stuff together. I think I love games that are able to kind of teach without you come away having learned something, but you don't feel like it's been a trial. And I think we're going to see more of that with processing power and graphics increasing. We've got the PS5, we've got the new Xbox coming out, and the potential. We're no longer stuck to this linear storyline where we start at one point and we play through. The whole open world thing, I think that's going to get bigger, and that will mean that we have more options to play in our own way. When I play against my brother online, he's an ex Royal Green Jacket, 22 years experience, and he wants to do this and he wants to achieve that, and he's got to get this and do that, whereas I'm just running around like, wow, look at that view, that's amazing, and he's telling me, he's going, tango down. I'm like, what? He's like, I've just shot someone. I'm like, well, just say you've shot someone, all right, So we all, just between me and him, we experience games in such a different way, which is why I very rarely play with him. But I think there's a lot of stuff coming out, and it's only going to increase the potential to make those great sort of sprawling games that incorporate so much. And it's a lot more work for guys like yourselves who work in the industry, but for us as consumers, it's fantastic because the choice is limitless, and I think that's brilliant. So yeah,
I think you made a really good point there, in that like I think what we're starting to see, like further to the point of like representation, is studios sort of trusting their audiences a lot more, and like not front loading us with a whole bunch of information, and just trusting your audience and trusting that they're smart enough to understand the experience that you're trying to portray to them, and then going on that journey past that point. And hopefully we start to see a lot more of that, rather than just your run and gun A to B, die, respawn, and all that good stuff.
And when we think about the games that we love, it's so often the games that give us those choices and allow us to make those decisions, but don't, no one wants to like play a game where they turn a corner, they've made a choice to turn a corner and they're dead. All right, and that's the game over. Of course we don't want that. But there's so much options to be, to allow your own character to come through. And that's what people love. People want to feel that connection. And I can remember years ago, playing Ocarina of Time, and we get to the end of it, and it's such a powerful story, and you're almost in tears. And it's like, people want that. That's what they want. They want to feel connected. They want to feel connected to the characters. And obviously, if the characters are look like some muscly 35-year-old white guy with a tattoo or a scar across here and a machine gun, it's like, come on, guys,
I think that what we're seeing, obviously, as games do progress forward and we do go through more character customization screens, obviously that means that we have more choice, and that is using more tech to do that as things are better suited to it. But Nika, do you think that we require more tech to be able to do that, or is it actually just a different approach from the human side of things to make everyone more inclusive anyway? You're already doing it just now, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't think it's necessarily we need more technology. We just need to start using what we've got. It's not that. Well, at least I don't think so. Maybe my devs will tell me different, and I'll get told off afterwards. But I don't think it's that hard to just represent people in different ways in video games. It's especially for something as simple as like representing different races and stuff like that. That is what I would see to be quite an easy thing to do in the current technology. That's that's just a design thing. But yeah, I think what we really need to do is to start sort of speaking more to our players, speaking more to the people that are playing the games, and sort of connecting with them and finding out more about them as people, so then we know how to represent them better in our games and find out what they want. So that's hopefully something that I'm going to hopefully achieve with Team 17, because obviously I'm in contact with our players every single day. I'm not gonna lie though, the majority of the players that I currently have that come and offer to volunteer and test games for us, they are young, white and male, which, fantastic. I'm getting players in, but I'd love to get more the rest of the population. We're slowly getting more and more people in. We're getting more sort of people of colour. We're getting people that are that have different disabilities, and whether it's colour blindness, dyslexia, or they play with modified controllers for mobility issues. But I don't have enough of them to be able to sort of then say, okay, well, how do you want to be represented? Like, what can we do to make you feel included in our games? And that's something that I really love to sort of work on and make sure that we can represent these people in a way that they feel fair to them.
It's really interesting you talking about modified controllers, because obviously that's a really big part of things. Currently, a games console, if you hand over someone a very traditional controller, you're expecting 2 thumbs, you're expecting very advanced use of triggers. There's all kinds of things that are then expected. And now there's a couple that Microsoft have released, obviously the adaptive gaming controller, which has lots of buttons and bits you can push that you can totally personalize. But I think what's also important to say is these things can be expensive. And despite the fact that I think Logitech and Microsoft have worked together to make something quite affordable, these are a lot, and there's charities like Special Effect that specifically work across the industry to try and get games in the hands of as many people as possible. But I do think that if we're looking at games in general, it could be seen as quite an expensive pastime that is potentially not for everyone. And I know you've discussed this a lot, Shay, across the board, is the fact that we don't want any kind of wealth divide in terms of what kind of technology people can grab onto, do we?
No, we don't. But it's sad to say, but games are quite a sort of like middle class hobby. Like, and I know that feels very extreme to say, but I mean, if you look at it, even historically, like games have only just gotten more expensive. I remember when they were like $29.99 and like $39.99, and I remember like having to save up my like my school dinner money. Like, oh, okay, like in these many weeks I'll be able to get that game, and now it's just gotten worse. And so as we go into like the next sort of gaming console generation, some of the prices that we've seen quoted, like, and again, it's that whole thing of like cutting people out of a conversation and cutting people out of they're not going to be able to afford what is such an amazing story or such an amazing and fun gameplay experience because they cannot afford it. And that's a real shame. Like, and I think that even then cuts into other things because, like, I know on the sort of like journalism side, like, as we both know, Lou, like, if you don't have like a new game to sit down and like review it, then you won't have any critical thoughts on it, and then you can't get those thoughts out into the internet, and then again you're out of a conversation, you're out of what's happening. And I think that really like stifles talent that could be in the industry but can't be for for the reasons just mentioned. And I think that's a real shame. Yeah.
Do you think, I've been looking at obviously it's the new console year, so we have the PlayStation 5 and we have the Xbox Series X coming, and what we knew was they were going to be very expensive. So obviously we've got, I think the PS5 is $459.99 at full price, its digital version is $359.99. Xbox, Microsoft is matching that, but what they're also doing is Microsoft have revealed the Xbox Series S, which is a smaller, slightly less powerful, not quite at 4K, but still new generation console. Do you think that's the kind of thing that will really change things, Shay, to make things that little bit more accessible?
Absolutely. You can see that they've sat down and thought about it, like past like the sort of new release period. They've gone, right, okay, how can we get as many people as possible playing as many games as we can? And like, not only have they released that sort of like slightly cheaper model, I think they also have like an all access plan where you can sort of pay in installments to then afford the console. And I think, like, I don't think there's ever been anything like that, not from the like console makers themselves. You might have seen that from like a third party service or shop, but never from Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo themselves. So I think having that right out the gate, I think, is a excellent way to address the sort of class divide that happens in video games as a whole.
I was just going to say, Shay, talking about Xbox and PlayStation stuff, I think I would also throw into the mix the fact that one of the system that I've been using the most is the one that I'm currently talking to you on now, is the good old iPad. I am completely kind of sold on iPad gaming from the point of view of I love the fact that I can kind of use it. It's got all my works stuff on it. I'm using it to talk to you guys now. I've got ridiculous games on there, and I love that. I love the fact that I've always wanted to be able to like just pick up my, I've gone through a stage of having the obligatory enormous desktop gaming PC that I had to go and sit at, and now I literally can take my gaming with me. And I think that's something that's certainly for the people that I support, that's a really important thing, because they can have a device that kind of not does everything, but they can play games on it. And I think certainly with the price of games through things like the Play Store and App Store and stuff, that's kind of makes it much more accessible. And what I find really interesting is, like on the iPad now, good old Nintendo have released Mario Kart on there. So, I've got lots of mates and we're all getting really excited because we're all like 55-year-old guys playing Mario Kart, it's like that. Welcome to my world. But I don't think we should underestimate the power of tablets for gaming devices. And with the advent of, some of the streaming gaming systems that are coming on, that's really interesting, because potentially you'll be able to play really high res, really top of the range games, but on a device that doesn't have the graphic capability to run it natively, sort of thing. So I'm quite excited about that. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying about the Xbox and PS. Yeah,
I think that's really interesting what you're saying about that, Alex, because actually a lot of people that play on iPad or smartphone are actually less likely to call themselves gamers, despite the fact that they get up in the morning, and obviously before we were locked down, everyone was sitting on the train playing Candy Crush or all of those things. And a lot of people don't consider themselves gamers, but there are full games sitting on iPads or Android tablets that are just as involving, just as puzzly, just as funny, just as exciting, or make you cry games that are there. So I think absolutely that's something that we shouldn't be discounting. And I think everyone should be proud to call themselves gamers, because it goes back to what we were talking about to start with, is no one thinks they are a gamer, because in order to be a gamer, you have to be that stereotype. But actually, we're trying to open things up. I think what I'd like to kind of end on is what your favorite games are just now, and why you're playing them and why they're for you. So a sort of personalized recommendation. So I'm going to start with you, Nika.
Oh, that's a really tough choice. Obviously, I play games literally all day, every day. That's one of the amazing perks of my job. One of my favourite games at the moment is a game that we're actually just about to bring out, kind of selfishly. It's called The Survivalists. It's set in the original Escapist universe, except you're stranded on an island and you have to sort of craft things and build things to survive on this island and go off and explore. It's really fun. There's sharks in it, and I quite like sharks as well. Yeah, I just really enjoy it, and you get to go and rescue like little monkeys and stuff that have been captured, and then you can feed them food, and then they help you, and they go and help you forage and like help you fight off. I think they're like orcs that come and try and ransack your camp and things like that, and it's a lot of fun. I've spent a bit of time on that one.
just a bit.
Little bit.
What about you, Shay?
So I'm playing this, it's described as like a rhythm violence game. It's called Thumper. So I originally played it like 4 years ago when it came out on PSVR, and I actually that's how I discovered I get really bad motion sickness, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna throw up. So not this, put it down. And then I saw just a couple of weeks ago that it was on the Switch for a couple of quid. I picked it up and I was like, oh my god, yes, this is so much better, and I'm having a blast with it. You're like this little beetle going down like this highway of hell, and you've got like notes kind of flying at you. It's a rhythm game, and it's got like this really, really intense like industrial soundtrack. It's like the definition of cool. I definitely recommend you check it out if you.
It's a brilliant game.
Yeah, it's really good.
What about you, Alex?
Being with you guys, I'm ashamed to admit I am the total cliche of gaming blokes.
There's no cliche. We've realized if this panel has taught us anything, it's that there are no cliches, Alex. There are none.
So currently, I'm loving Call of Duty, but on the iPad. And I've even bought myself a little separate Bluetooth controller, which I love.
Nice.
But I'm also totally addicted to. There's a great game called Zombie Mo, which is like a top-down, cutesy, very sort of almost anime, Japanese kind of style shooter, and I love that because I love anything where you kind of upgrade stuff and all that. But yeah, all the classics. So things like I was saying, like Mario Kart on the iPad. When the Xbox comes out, I will get it probably. I will. Whatever it comes out with, so some first-person shooter, but I also love anything strategy. So I love all the sort of Total War games, all those sort of castle sim things, anything with lots of swords and armor. I'm like, yeah.
Nice. And I think now it feels like quite a safe environment for me to admit that I have spent 700 hours playing Animal Crossing on the Switch.
This is a safe space, don't worry.
In lockdown, that's fine.
Exactly. I mean, it was I think it's really important, Animal Crossing. I think for 2020, in terms of people thinking differently about games, I don't know about you guys, but I saw a lot of different brands getting involved in 2020. I think Gillette got involved, especially talking about different skin. They brought in different skin conditions and they basically created lots and lots of positive things with Animal Crossing. Brands like Valentino were doing fashion shows in it, but I feel like Animal Crossing brought everyone together, let everyone play together in nice social environments, but also is just a nice thing where you catch bugs and craft pumpkin heads and do all of those things. So Animal Crossing has been my absolute, I wouldn't say addiction. I think that's a negative word that has negative connotations. So joy. We will say Animal Crossing has been my joy.
A lot of joy.
700 hours of joy. But I think it's been so lovely talking to you guys about gaming. So obviously we know that gaming is for everyone. We are all very different and have very different gaming experiences, but we're all gamers. And I think it's really, really important to recognize that. So it will quickly go around just to make sure that everyone knows where to find you, where to find any information. Nika, we'll start with you. Where can everyone be up to date with Team 17 or yourself?
So obviously just go onto the Team 17 website. We would absolutely love for you to come and join our usability sessions. We do pay you guys to do it, so it's well worth it. Sometimes you get some added bonuses. So like, there's the potential to get your name in the credits of the game, things like that. Like, and we really do take your feedback on board. So yeah, if you just go to the Team 17 website, you will find, I believe it's either the research lab or usability lab. If you go on there, there's a thing to say, yeah, I want to sign up to the usability lab. And all our tests are remote at the moment, so you can literally be anywhere, and we can invite you to come play games with us, and it's a heck of a lot of fun.
Even better, amazing.
Nika, could I send some of my guys over to there?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. I would love that.
Thank you.
Amazing. We'll skip to you, Alex. Just where will people find out more?
Yeah, so just anyone can Google me under Alex Rowland, You're It Now, or You're It Now is www.youritnow.co.uk. The new ANVG website is very nearly there. You'll be able to find us at www.anvg.co.uk. We're also on Facebook with both You're It Now and ANVG. But yeah, if you Google us, we Google, especially if you Google You're It Now Somerset, I come up. So yeah, please do. And if anyone's got any stuff around technology or people with learning disabilities, autism, Asperger's, feel free, send us a question.
Perfect. And yourself, Shay?
So I'm on Twitter just as @moods_JPG. I was like, do I even know how to spell my own handle there? That's it. You can also find out more about Level Up Link Up at Level Up Link Up, both on Twitter and Instagram. We've got an event, I think, next week afterwards, so hopefully there'll be more details about that. And funny enough, as you mentioned Animal Crossing, we actually had a massive conversation about like it being the game of quarantine at Glasshouse Games. If you like YouTube Glasshouse Games, will come up, and yeah, you can see us chatting about our habits. I had some very embarrassing habits revolving like turnips in it. Like, I'm ashamed to say, but
we've all got turnip. We all have turnip guilt
turnip
now.
Stories, yeah,
yep.
Massively so. So we spent some time chatting about that. So if that's something you fancy, you can go and pop along and listen to that too.
Perfect. Thank you. And if you're looking for me, I'm on Twitter at @shiny_demon, and you hear me on BBC Radio Scotland every week talking about games and tech. And thank you so much for watching, and do let us know what you think. Thank you.